Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Topic of conversation is the data explosion in continuous controls monitoring. I want to welcome to ISMG studio, Robin Das. He's Executive Director, Market Growth Strategist and Business Development with DataBee, which is a Comcast, NBC Universal company. That was a lot to say. Did I get it all?
Just about.
Robin, I'm delighted to have you here. Thanks. It's good to meet you in person.
It's great to be here.
So you and I have chatted in the past. For context, talk about the impacts of this data explosion that we all have experienced in the past few years, and what are the most urgent pain points?
Yeah, so great question. If you think about things like work from home, the shift to the cloud, like IoT, all these things have been these big sort of tailwinds that have just increased the amount of data that's being produced by tools, by systems, and all of that data needs to be managed. And from a security perspective, all that data needs to be managed and looked at, and you need to kind of have visibility into this data. And that is a real challenge for these security organizations, is when you have this volume of data coming in at such a pace. How do I look at that? How do I decide what's important? How do I search for those needles in multiple haystacks that are being thrown at me every day?
And any one of those would be a seismic change, and we were privileged or not to have them all together.
Exactly. It was like a perfect storm.
Yeah. How did this result in the rise of DataBee?
So DataBee was created internally at Comcast to address our own challenges with all these data things. We adopted more modern architectures, looking at a security data fabric to be able to kind of handle this volume of data coming at us at pace. And so essentially what it is we do is, if you think about all these tools and solutions, the data has gravity. And so what we try and do is we try and extract that data from where it is, we clean it up, we normalize it, we place it into a standardized format, and then we give it back to the customer for them to power internal insights.
So how are these pain points, the data explosion, most acute for the professionals that are charged with continuous controls monitoring?
Yeah, so those folks would typically be your GRC teams or your auditors. And so I think there's really two challenges for these folks. Number one, it's that manual effort. So just a lot of time spent trying to take that data, clean it up, try and understand what it is they're looking at, and then ask for that data again, clean it up. It's that very manual process, almost like relying on our favorite tool, Excel spreadsheets, to kind of solve all these things. And that's challenge. Well, at least it's my favorite tool. I don't know about you.
No, it's pretty ubiquitous.
And so that's challenge number one. And then challenge number two is just the complexity of the enterprise. And so, you might have a control, and it sort of in theory has a standard, but how do you sort of apply that to the nuances of the enterprise? And so those are the two sort of areas that we see as the pain points for the auditors.
So let's segue to DataBee's continuous controls monitoring solution. How do you address these pain points?
Yeah, so the first thing is on that manual nature of the data. The fact that we have the pipelines set up, it means we're continuously pulling that data. So we're always able to pull it. So we've kind of alleviated the burden on those audit teams, so they're not having to spend as much time doing that manual cleanup, that manual work of going to hunt for the data, trying to find the owners of that data to kind of give them access for. So number one, we sort of alleviate that burden. And number two, when you have all the data, you can begin to ask more intelligent questions about the compliance and the controls. So for example, a really easy example is endpoint. Do I have endpoint software deployed everywhere it should be? Well, first of all, you want to define, what does everywhere mean, right? And so in a traditional viewpoint, they're just going to have a simple numerator, simple denominator, and then on to the next control. We're able to help them understand what everywhere means. Should it be on that laptop? Yes. Should it be on the network switch? Probably not. And then we can help them answer further nuanced questions, which is like, well, it's deployed, but is it turned on? Okay, yes or no. Like, it's deployed, it's turned on, is it the right version? And so some of those questions you can kind of really answer when you have all that data. And that's really the power of sort of moving to this continuous controls monitoring. And then there's one sort of final benefit, which is, if you think about the enterprise, the audit team sort of swings on through, and maybe it's the first, they'll do the audit every quarter or annually. Well, kind of what happens, to those controls when the audit team isn't necessarily looking at it? They start to drift. The benefit of having this continuous controls monitoring approach is that you're always up to date with how compliant you are as an organization.
So what results can enterprises expect to see? Maybe you can offer some examples of customer
Yeah,
use
I mean, for us, I think it's the amount of time the audit team is spending on the manual tasks. They're spending less time on that, and they're able to spend more time on asking the intelligent questions of their data. The second key benefit is you'd be able to. The whole point about compliance is you want to make it a team sport. You want it to be deployed across the organization, and you want like ownership across the organization. So, a question to you is like, what's more powerful? Some faceless auditor from, some team shooting you a note being like, you need to take your phishing training? Or is it going to be your boss saying, Tom, you failed it 5 times now. Can you pass your phishing test, right? It's going to be more effective, I think, if it comes from your boss. And so by having all that data and overlaying that additional business context, you're really able to give sort of the organization the visibility and the accountability that can drive those compliance outcomes.
Robin, you've been through this, you've lived this. What's your advice for organizations in terms of the questions they need to be asking themselves about how they responded to this data explosion?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first question is, am I spending too much of my time doing that manual cleanup and not enough time on data analysis? Like, that's the first thing, is it's your data. There are insights within that data, but if all you're doing is spending time cleaning it up and not analyzing it, you're never going to get to where you need to be. I think to me, that's the most important thing is make sure you're not spending 80% of your time doing cleanup, 20% doing analysis. It should be the reverse.
Well said. Robin, I appreciate your time. Thank you for your insight.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Tom.
Again, we've had Robin Das with DataBee. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.